The ballroom at the Aurora Grand was glowing with crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors, when my husband leaned in close and whispered through clenched teeth, "Stay in the back. Your dress is embarrassing." I had worn the only gown I owned, a soft navy blue dress I bought from a resale shop for $40. It was simple, modest and neat, but to Victor, it might as well have been a rag. "Do not talk to anyone," he added. "I need these people to think I am successful, not married to someone who looks like she does not belong. My name is Clara Whitmore, and for 25 years I had learned how to disappear." Victor took my arm and guided me toward the darkest corner near the bar, where tall plants cast long shadows across the wall. "Stand here," he said. "I will come get you when it is time to leave." Then he walked away without another glance. Around me, women in silk gowns laughed with men in tailored suits. Their diamonds caught the light and threw it back in tiny flashes of power and money. I held a glass of water with both hands, so no one would notice they were shaking. This gala was not just a party. It was Victor's. Last chance. His company was drowning in debt, and tonight he needed to impress the new owner of the corporation that controlled his future. Then the room changed. The soft noise of conversation fell away as if someone had turned down the volume. Heads turned toward the entrance. A tall man stepped inside, wearing a charcoal suit that looked like it had been made for him alone. He did not rush. He did not scan the room nervously. He moved like someone who knew exactly who he was. People whispered. Leonard Hale, the billionaire, the new CEO. Across the room, Victor spotted him and rushed forward with a wide, eager smile. His hand shot out in greeting. Leonard took it politely, but his eyes were not on Victor. They were searching. Then they found me. For one long, impossible moment. Leonard Hale stared directly at me from across the ballroom. His face went pale as if he had seen a ghost. He let go of Victor's hand and walked straight toward me. The crowd parted for him, as if pulled by gravity. When he reached me, he stopped so close I could smell his cologne and hear his breath. "Clara," he said softly. No one had said my name like that in 30 years. He took both my hands in his and his eyes filled with tears. "I have been looking for you for 30 years. He said, "I still love you." Behind us, Victor's. Champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. What Leonard said that night did not just shock Victor. It cracked open the life I had been quietly surviving for decades. To the people watching, I was only the awkward wife in a simple dress. But behind that image was a woman who had spent 25 years shrinking herself to fit inside someone else's shadow. Victor never hit me in the early years. He did not have to. His power came in other ways, in the money he controlled, and the rules he set, and the constant reminders that I was lucky he had chosen me. I was given an allowance every month. $200 to cover everything I needed. Clothes, makeup, gifts, even groceries. When he felt I had spent too much the month before, I learned quickly how to stretch a dollar and how to pretend I did not need anything. If I wanted to see my parents, I had to tell him first. If I wanted to buy a new book, I had to explain why it was necessary. My world became smaller year by year until it barely extended beyond the walls of the house he bought to display his success. At business dinners, I sat quietly beside him, nodding and smiling while he spoke. When I offered an opinion, he would gently touch my arm, a signal to stop. "You are making it awkward," he would whisper, as if I were a child. Over time, I forgot what it felt like to be heard. I used to be someone who loved books and poetry, and long conversations about ideas I had once planned to become a teacher. I wanted to help children discover stories that could change their lives. But Victor did not marry me for my dreams. He married me for my silence. I became very good at it. I learned how to fold myself into the background at parties, how to look pleasant without being noticeable, how to make sure no one ever accused me of drawing attention away from him. That was why his words at the gala hurt more than I could explain. Stay in the back. Your dress is embarrassing. It was not about the dress. It was about what he believed I was, an accessory that should not distract from the main display. When Leonard walked toward me and spoke my name, it felt like someone had turned on a light inside a room that had been dark for years. I had forgotten how it felt to be seen. Victor noticed it too. From across the room, I could feel his eyes on me, sharp and cold. The moment Leonard took my hands, something in. Victor snapped. He did not care who Leonard was or how powerful. He only saw another man touching what he believed belonged to him. That was the truth I had been avoiding for 25 years. Victor did not love me. He owned me. And for the first time since I married him, someone had just reminded me that I was more than property. I was a person, with a past, with a heart, and with a story that had never really ended. Leonard Hale was not a stranger to me. He was the first man who ever made me feel like my thoughts mattered. We met when we were both in college, on a rainy afternoon in the library. I was buried under a stack of literature books, trying to keep my scholarship from slipping away. When he walked up and asked if I was hungry, I told him I could not afford to eat out. He smiled and said, "I did not ask if you could pay. I asked if you were hungry." That was Leonard, direct, honest, kind, in a way that did not feel forced. We went to a small diner that night and talked for hours about books, about dreams, about the future. He told me about his family and their business empire, but he never used it to impress me. He listened when I spoke as if every word mattered. I had never experienced that before. Soon we were inseparable. He brought me into his world of dinners and events, but he also stepped fully into mine. Late-night study sessions, cheap coffee, and long walks across campus, talking about everything and nothing. For the first time, I felt chosen, not tolerated. The night he proposed is burned into my memory. We were sitting by the lake near the university watching the water glow under the streetlights. He pulled out a small velvet box, and inside was an emerald ring that once belonged to his grandmother. His hands were shaking as he slipped it onto my finger. "I want to spend my life with you, Clara." He said, "I want to build everything with you." I said yes, without fear, without doubt, without hesitation. We were young, and we believed love could survive anything. But love was not the only force in Leonard's world. His father, Douglas Hale, was powerful and ruthless. A man who saw relationships as transactions and people as tools. When he found out Leonard planned to marry me, he made it very clear that I was not acceptable. I did not come from money. I did not come from influence. I came from dreams. And in his world, that made me dangerous. The last time I saw Leonard before everything fell apart, he was standing in a coffee shop, holding that emerald ring in his hand, asking me why I was walking away. I never told him the truth. I let him believe I had simply stopped loving him. Because sometimes the cruelest lies feel like the only way to protect the people we love. Now, 30 years later, he was standing in front of me again in a ballroom full of strangers and power and secrets. And the past I had buried was suddenly alive. The room had gone completely still. Hundreds of people stood frozen in place, watching Leonard Hale hold my hands as if the world around us no longer existed. Victor was the first to react. He pushed through the crowd with his face tight and red. "What is this?" he snapped, pulling his arm back as if he could physically separate us from the moment Leonard did not even look at him. "Clara," he said softly, "I thought I would never see you again." I could barely breathe. The sound of his voice carried 30 years of memory and regret and longing. Victor grabbed my arm hard enough to make me flinch. "She is my wife," he said loudly. "You are making a mistake." Leonard finally turned his eyes toward him. They were calm, but cold. "I am not the one who made the mistake," he replied. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a white card with silver lettering. "Please call me Clara. We need to talk." He pressed the card into my palm. His fingers brushed mine in a way that sent a familiar warmth through my chest. Victor tightened his grip on my arm. "You will not be calling anyone." Leonard looked at Victor, then back at me. "I will be waiting," he said, "no matter how long it takes." The moment shattered. Whispers rippled through the ballroom like a storm. People leaned closer, pretending to sip their drinks while absorbing every detail of the scandal unfolding in front of them. Victor dragged me away toward the exit, his breath hot with rage. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" he hissed. "You humiliated me in front of everyone who matters." But for the first time in my life, I was not thinking about his reputation. I was thinking about the card in my hand, the name Leonard Hale. And the way my heart was beating, like it had been asleep for decades and had finally woken up. Leonard did not know the real reason I left him. No one did. Not my friends, not my parents, not even the man I married. The truth began in a quiet office high above the city 30 years ago. Douglas Hale sat behind a massive desk made of dark, polished wood. When I walked in, he did not stand. He did not smile. He simply studied me the way someone studies a problem that needs to be removed. "So you are the girl my son wants to marry," he said. I lifted my chin, trying to be brave. "Yes, we love each other." Douglas leaned back in his chair. "Love is not what keeps this family alive. Miss Whitmore Power is." He told me he had done his research on me. My scholarship, my parents, my dreams. One by one, he listed the things that made up my entire future. One phone call, he said, and your scholarship disappears. Another, and you will never get hired by any decent school district. Then he leaned forward, and his voice dropped. "And if Leonard tries to walk away from this family for you, I will make sure he never succeeds at anything." I felt sick. He was not threatening just me. He was threatening the man I loved. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "You will break up with my son," Douglas replied. "You will tell him you realized you are not right for each other. You will give him back the ring, and then you will disappear from his life. And if I do not, then both of you lose everything." There was something else he did not know. 3 days earlier, I had taken a pregnancy test in my dorm room. 2 lines had appeared bright and undeniable. I was carrying Leonard's child. If Douglas destroyed his future and mine, what kind of life would that child have? So I did the only thing I could think to do. I sacrificed us. I met Leonard in our favorite coffee shop and told him I did not love him anymore. I told him we wanted different things. I told him lies that felt like knives in my throat. When he begged me to explain, I slid the emerald ring across the table and stood up. 3 weeks later, I lost the baby. I bled alone in a small hospital room, grieving a future no one else even knew existed. Leonard tried to reach me after that, but I could not face him. The truth was too painful. 6 months later, Victor asked me to marry him. I said yes. Not because I loved him, but because I was tired of being alone with my grief, and that was how I became Clara Whitmore. 3 days after the gala, I finally called Leonard. We met at a small cafe across town, a quiet place where no one would recognize him and no one would recognize me. When he saw me walk in, he stood up so fast he nearly knocked over his chair. "You came," he said. I nodded and sat across from him. My hands were shaking. "You deserve the truth," I said. So I told him everything. I told him about Douglas, and the threats, and the meeting, in that cold office. I told him about the pregnancy I had never revealed and the miscarriage that followed. I watched the color drain from his face as the story unfolded. "My father did this," he said softly. "He destroyed our life." Leonard reached across the table and took my hands. "I searched for you. Clara, I hired investigators. I followed every lead. I never stopped." Tears filled my eyes. "Victor stopped them," I whispered. "He paid people to lie. He made sure you could never find me." Leonard closed his eyes for a moment, as if steadying himself. "I never stopped loving you," he said. Then he told me about his own life. The marriage that was built on appearances. The divorce that left him empty. The years he spent believing I had chosen someone else. "Clara," he said, "I cannot give you back the years we lost. But I can give you something now." He slid a folder across the table. "A job, an office, a salary enough for you to live on your own. I want you to be free," he said. "Not owned. Not controlled." For the first time in 25 years, someone was offering me a choice, and I was terrified. When I returned home, Victor was waiting for me. He was standing in the kitchen with his arms crossed as if he had been rehearsing this moment. "Where were you?" he asked. "I went out for coffee," I replied, trying to sound calm. "With Leonard Hale." It was not a question. Something inside me broke. Then I was tired of lying. I was tired of pretending. "Yes," I said, "I met him." Victor laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Of course you did. You always did have a weakness for him." Then he said something that made my blood run cold. "Do you know how many times Leonard tried to find you?" I stared at him. "What 30 years of investigators' phone calls and questions?" Victor replied calmly. "I made sure every one of them went nowhere." "You lied to him," I whispered. "I protected my marriage," he corrected. He told me how he paid people to give Leonard false information, how he shut down every trail before it reached me. "You would have left me if he had found you," he said. And I was not about to let that happen. The truth was ugly and undeniable. He did not love me. He owned me. "You stole my life," I said. Victor stepped closer, his eyes cold. "I gave you a life. You would be nothing without me." Then he grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. "You are not leaving this house." That was the moment I knew staying would destroy me. I pulled away from him and went upstairs to pack. When I came back down, my suitcase in hand, he was on the phone shouting to someone about lawyers and money. "You will regret this," he called after me. "You will come crawling back." But I walked out anyway. Leonard was waiting for me at the hotel. The moment he saw the bruises on my arm, his face went dark. "Did he hurt you?" he asked. I nodded. That was all he needed to hear. The next day, his lawyers began digging into Victor's finances. What they found was worse than anyone expected. Money moving through shell companies, real estate deals that did not make sense, accounts that did not match the books. Victor was laundering money. Within a week, federal investigators were involved. Victor tried to scare me with legal threats. He froze the accounts. He canceled my credit cards. But Leonard stepped in quietly, paying for everything without ever making me feel small. 2 weeks later, Victor was arrested at his office. The man who once controlled every part of my life was led away in handcuffs while cameras flashed. His empire collapsed overnight, and so did his power over me. Life began to feel different almost immediately. Without Victor's shadow hanging over me, every choice became mine to make. I chose what to wear, where to go, and how to spend my time. Those simple freedoms felt like miracles. I moved into a small apartment near Leonard's office. It was not fancy, but it was quiet, and it belonged to me. For the first time in decades, I slept without fear of someone questioning my every move. My new job gave me more than money. It gave me purpose. I worked with schools and libraries, helping children discover the joy of reading, something I had once dreamed of doing, before my life took a very different turn. Leonard never tried to control me. He offered help, but never demanded anything in return. That alone healed parts of me I did not know were broken. Slowly, I began to trust myself again. One evening, as we walked through a park near the river, Leonard stopped and took my hands. "We lost a lifetime," he said, "but we do not have to lose the rest of it." Then he knelt and held out a small velvet box. Inside was the emerald ring. "Will you marry me again?" "Clara," he asked. This time by choice, I did not hesitate. Our wedding was nothing like the first one. There were no business associates, no empty smiles, no pressure to impress anyone, only people who truly cared about us. The ceremony took place in a quiet garden overlooking the mountains where Leonard and I once dreamed about our future. When we were young, I wore a simple ivory dress. It was not expensive, but it felt perfect because I had chosen it myself. Leonard stood waiting for me with the same look he had when he proposed the first time, wonder mixed with love. When he slipped the emerald ring onto my finger again, it felt like something had finally come full circle. We did not promise perfection. We promised honesty, kindness, and the courage to choose each other every day. And for the first time in my life, those vows felt real. For most of my life, I believed safety was more important than happiness. I stayed in a marriage that made me small because I was afraid of being alone. But real love does not silence you or trap you or make you feel invisible. It sees you. It chooses you. If this story taught me anything, it is that it is never too late to reclaim your life. It is never too late to walk away from someone who treats you like an object instead of a human being. And it is never too late to choose yourself. If you connected with this story, please like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And tell me in the comments what city you are watching from.